Hello, hello, hello there. I am really going out on a limb and starting my own YouTube channel. This is something that has swirled around in my head for a long time, and I've been challenged recently to just make the first video and see how it goes. So this is my introduction to my eating disorder freedom recovery page. It's going to be all about eating disorders in particular, but all sorts of addictions. I do go to Celebrate Recovery, so I am a beloved daughter of the Most High King, Jesus Christ, and I started my recovery journey 10 years ago on July 26th. I was admitted into Selah House, which is a Christian residential treatment facility for women struggling with eating disorders. Once I was there for 6 weeks, came home, and continued my recovery. A year after being home, I found a Celebrate Recovery meeting that was very close to my house. It's less than 10 minutes away. So I began attending there after watching the movie Home Run. And my therapist at that time had asked me to find a group for codependence. Because, hello, I think so many people are codependent and don't even realize it. And it's a very confusing dilemma that so many of us face. I can get into that later at another time, because every time I bring up codependency, it's a term that is being thrown around more and more nowadays, but it's still a confusing term. So anyways, she challenged me with that, and I was struggling to find a group. I just happened to watch that movie Home Run on Netflix, and it was all about Celebrate Recovery and a man struggling in an alcohol addiction. The scene really got me to search out and find a Celebrate Recovery meeting in my area was when the main character was in the lobby of the church, and the ministry leader, who I found out later is John Baker, who was vital in starting Celebrate Recovery over 25 years ago. He played the ministry leader, and as this man, the character struggling with the alcohol addiction, was leaving the meeting, the ministry leader stopped him and said, "What's going on? Why are you leaving?" He said, "This just isn't for me." It happened to be a testimony night, not a lesson night. And through their discussion and the challenge of him to stick around for a little bit, for more than just one night, the camera panned over to a bulletin board, and it listed all the different struggles that Celebrate Recovery addresses. And one of them just happened to be eating disorders. So after seeing that, and codependency was probably up there too. After seeing that, I Googled and found this meeting that was really close to us. We meet on Thursday nights, and I'm telling you what, the first more than 6 months that I was there, I cried all through Open Share Group, which is breakout groups after the main session. They're gender specific, and they did not have an eating disorder open share group, but they do have a group called A to Z, which is any hurt, habit, or hang up that you may struggle with. They could start with the letter A and all the way through every hurt, habit, or hang up, all the way to the letter Z. So there is something for everyone. Those first 6 months, it could have been longer. I couldn't talk. I just cried through the meetings. And let me tell you, there is so much healing to be had whenever we just listen and listen to other people's stories and realize they may not have the exact scenario of issues that I have, but just hearing them share struggles and share victories really helped me to know that I'm not alone. And that is one reason I am starting this YouTube channel, because I want you to know that you're not alone. And just like as I was listening, you may listen to me and think, I don't struggle with that. But if you pull back the layers, I guess this is what I'm getting to. Once you pull back layers of what's going on, the bottom line is what's underneath all of the behaviors, the hurts that have come into our lives. The basis is all the same. We are trying to navigate through life, and sometimes we use addictions to help us navigate those issues that we're having. So there is healing. Healing is possible. After being around Celebrate Recovery for almost a year, I could see healing coming and see the benefits of just being there and making friends and knowing that I'm not alone. Around that 1 year mark, it could have been a little less, I joined a step study, which is gender specific again, and you meet weekly for 6 to 9 months. A lot of groups, a lot of step studies takes that whole 9 months. One little tidbit on the side. We have noticed across the board that the men's groups last longer, sometimes 10, 11 months long, where the women are 6 to 9 months. And what we have determined is men typically in our society don't have the opportunity or are reluctant to form friendships and go deep in those friendships, expressing their feelings. So once they get into this safe space of a step study and they realize that these men can be trusted, then once they start sharing, they don't want to stop. They keep going. So women don't seem to have that problem as much. There are still things that will hold us back until we learn that we can trust these people that we're meeting with, and that's where the real healing is. So you meet weekly. The group closes after, I want to say, the first 4 meetings, meaning that it's unlike a regular Celebrate Recovery meeting where there's large group and then the small groups that you go into after the meeting. In a step study, once the meeting closes, that means nobody new is going to be coming in. Friendships and trust is able to be established. There are 4 books that you go through. to take you through all the recovery steps, 12 steps. Um, and as you go through these lessons and answer the questions at home every week, then you go into group and you have to share your answers. You have to read what you wrote. And let me tell you, it is super scary at first. But like I said, after you share for so many weeks and you listen, you realize that these are people that can be trusted. I had a huge problem trusting women, and still sometimes, because key women in my life that I should have been able to depend on failed me. And learning that I really could trust these people was huge. And so much healing came from just attending Celebrate Recovery. You may be wondering why I'm just holding my camera over this very funny looking symbol. If you are in the eating disorder recovery world at all, you know what this symbol is. It is the recovery symbol for the National Eating Disorder Association. So from what I understand, this symbol, this part of it right here, is half of the shape of a heart. You can see that. And then the other longer piece is supposed to resemble the curves of a woman's body. And then I added this part to it, Jeremiah 29:11, which is my life verse. And that says, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." So when I was at Selah House, going through my initial 6 weeks, it's like a reset, is what inpatient is like. That's how I think about it. But anyways, I had the woman who is a professional artist that was one of our support workers, drew this up for me, and I took it to a tattoo shop after I graduated from the program. The same day that I graduated, that I commenced, I went to the tattoo parlor and had that tattooed onto my wrist. Why did I choose my wrist instead of my shoulder, my back, my neck, whatever? Because those are all areas that I had thought about. I thought about doing it on that part of the wrist. But I chose this because when I'm cooking, when I'm eating, when I'm writing, no matter what I'm doing, that is visible as a reminder that I do have a hope, I do have a future that is not death. Because the eating disorder voice in my head for the majority of my life, and I'm in my 60s, the majority of my life, that eating disorder voice, which we call ED, eating disorder, it's the acronym, told me my whole life that I didn't have a hope, I didn't have a future, that death was my future. And if you know, you know, that voice in your head is like a tape. It goes nonstop, reminding you of those lies. It's hard to talk about now because living in that addiction, there are no words for it right now. As you can tell, I didn't plan out exactly what I was going to say to introduce my channel. This is just a beginning, and I am hoping that you will stick around and seek help if you find yourself in a similar place that I was 10 years ago when I hit a brick wall. I knew I just had given up. I knew I couldn't go on any longer. If I hadn't gotten into treatment 10 years ago, I know that I would be dead now. Yeah, because that's where I was going in this addiction. My exact diagnosis was, and it really tripped me up for a long time. I was diagnosed with having an eating disorder not otherwise specified. And the reason it was that diagnosis is I didn't fit into the stereotypical symptoms that go along with anorexia. Although I was restricting severely, I was starving myself basically at the very end there. But on top of that, I overexercised. And as I was getting into this, and as my behaviors became more and more and more, I really thought I was being healthy because everybody around me was doing very similar things, talking the very same way that I was thinking. So it felt very normalized. I worked in a bakery, which, hello, that was not easy to do. But these other women that I worked with talked about, oh, I can have this cookie from the bakery today because I'm going to go to the gym or I'm going to go running. So it's like a trade-off. I'll burn it off so I can have it now. So that was my way of thinking. And it got so severe that I wasn't just thinking that way with treats or desserts. I also thought like that when it came to anything. Eating a salad, having a glass of water. It was bad. I would go to work every day and come home and collapse on the sofa because I had absolutely no energy except to go running and to go to the gym. So at the beginning, I thought I was doing it smart. I ran 3 to 4 days a week, had my rest days in between. But on those rest days are the days that I went to the gym. When I first started out running, my goal was to go from one mailbox to the next. And then once I could do that, then I started adding, okay, can I do 3, 4 mailboxes? And it wasn't too long until I could do a full loop around my neighborhood without stopping. And that is a mile. Everybody around me was also, at that time, talking about running in 5Ks. And I would put my hands over my ears, la, 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 I don't want to hear about 5Ks. Because I think that I was, honestly, the bottom line is, I up front assumed I could never do that. I could never enroll in a race like that because I wouldn't be able to have the stamina to make it. I didn't even want to know how far a 5K was. But the more I heard about it, the more intrigued I was. And as I was adding laps on to my daily running, I could run 3 loops without stopping. Or if I did stop, I would just walk for a short time and then continue on. Then I started getting bored running laps in my neighborhood. So after 3 or 4 laps in the neighborhood, then I would venture out of my neighborhood and go further and further in a familiar loop that I knew. It got to, at the very end, I was running 8 miles a day. It would get to the point where my feet would start bleeding because of the wear and tear. I thought I had good shoes, but the wear and tear that was, and the toll that was taking on my body was unbelievable. My feet would start bleeding. I would call my husband to come pick me up, and he so graciously did that, even though he was super concerned about what I was doing. He would come pick me up, and I don't really remember him telling me I couldn't go running, because part of this is my family loved when I did go out and run, because I was so toxic when I wasn't doing those things. They saw that when I went out and ran or went to the gym, all the endorphins that I was releasing, I would come home, and even though I was exhausted, I was happier. So yeah, I'm not blaming my family. I am just saying that they, even though they may have been concerned, they saw the benefits of what this was doing to me emotionally and mentally. Yeah. I will share another time about when this came to a head and why I decided to seek treatment and how I ended up in Indiana at Saleh House, this residential treatment center that was in the middle of nowhere. If you know Indiana at all, I was in Anderson, I believe is the name of the town where that treatment center was. Nothing around. We had 4 walls to look at, have sessions with our therapists, the psychiatrists, the psychologists. We had art therapy, equine therapy, which was amazing. I always have, and still have, if I'm being honest, a healthy respect for horses. I almost said elephants. For horses. I was terrified, but I was amazed at what I learned from these horses during equine therapy. So the whole experience, the whole residential treatment, even though it was scary at first, and even though many days I felt like I didn't deserve to be there, I wasn't sick enough to be there. There were girls, women, that deserved it more than I did. I didn't deserve to be there. And I had many discussions with many different people, and I think it was my sister that convinced me that you don't get accepted into a treatment center if you don't have a diagnosis, if there's not a reason for you to be there. The intake and the approval acceptance period was long, and it was intense. So when I really sat with those words that you don't get accepted into a center unless you really need to be there, finally sank in and helped me realize that those words are true. So back to my tattoo. If I was thinking that I really didn't have an eating disorder, or that my behaviors weren't bad enough, didn't warrant me being there, then when I got home from treatment, those thoughts would be even more so magnified. So the reason I went the day that I commenced was I wanted a marker, just like the Israelites put stones as markers whenever God did something miraculous, or if there was just anything that they needed, a physical reminder of what God did. That's what my tattoo is to me. Every time I sit down to eat or was tempted not to eat, I was reminded of treatment. I was reminded that I need a recovery. I needed recovery from this eating disorder that held me captive. I needed a recovery, and I really do have a hope, and I have a future. And I will end on that note. I could go on and on and on a lot longer, but I will take this in small chunks and just know that I am glad that you're here. I am hoping that you subscribe and that you stick around and that you may find encouragement in whatever you may see or hear. Again, thank you, and I will see you next time.